Special thank you to my YouTube members and patrons for supporting the channel and supporting my content. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another subreddit video. Today we are looking at something a little bit different. I haven't looked at this subreddit before, but it was recommended to me by my boyfriend, so I'm gonna have a look. It is called r/AmITheAsshole, which is a subreddit dedicated to people asking exactly that question. They supply stories, they supply context, and they ask, am I in the wrong here, or is the other person in the wrong here? And I want to have a look, and I don't know, maybe we can come to some conclusions about whether they are in the wrong or not. I want to say before we have a look that finding the posts where the people were actually in the wrong was more difficult because they tend to get downvoted more, even though the subreddit says not to do that, just because people prefer to upvote the stories where the person's in the right. So I had to sort of go and specifically look for a few because they were all like in the right. So anyway, let's take a look, shall we? Am I the asshole for making my girlfriend spend the night at my parents' place in my home country and not taking her to a hotel? Context: I'm South African, my girlfriend is American. We've been together for 3 years. 2 weeks ago I took her to see my family. My parents and sister live in a small apartment. We agreed to spend the first 3 days at their place. My sister offered her bedroom to my girlfriend and the remaining 7 at a hotel. After dinner, my girlfriend told me to take her to a hotel. When I asked her what's wrong, she said that the bed was squeaky and if she was going to sleep alone after a long flight and in a foreign country, at least it should be comfortable. I suggested we spend the night at their place and then give them an excuse the next day about not staying for the other 2 nights. I told her she should stay at least as a courtesy to my little sister, 15, after what she did to her. In addition to giving her the room, she bought her a traditional dress and some jewelry from her own savings and made some Herzogis for her. But she refused my suggestion and insisted on spending the night at a hotel. I told her I wasn't going to drive her because I was also tired, and since she didn't feel comfortable taking a taxi or Uber alone, she doesn't have any other choice other than staying the night. Safe to say, the rest of the visit was awkward and terrible. My girlfriend only pretended to talk with me when we visited my parents. My sister was sad and didn't buy the excuse we gave because she thought my girlfriend didn't like her room and blamed herself for not putting more effort into preparing it to my girlfriend's liking. In the comments, they also mentioned that the girlfriend was the one that suggested they stay the 3 nights at his family's house because she wanted to see where he grew up. So you're not the asshole, it is the girlfriend. For one, she suggested it, and for 2, she couldn't just deal with it for at least a day, just a day after it was her that suggested it, and then his sister ended up blaming herself, thinking it was her fault that she didn't prepare the room properly or that she wasn't considerate enough. Like, I don't know, it speaks wonders about the girlfriend, really. It says a lot. Like, I get that it might not be the comfiest stay and you might not sleep well, but that's something you just deal with for 1 night. Like, I don't know, at least take the ultimatum of, fine, we don't have to stay the 3, but you can stay 1. Like, yeah, I don't know. Am I the asshole for telling my stepsister that I am glad we won't be related for much longer on social media? That's an interesting title to start with. I am not in America. My girlfriend, Sarah, 24F, and I, 24 male, were staying at my dad's place. My dad and his wife were getting divorced, but they wanted to celebrate my sister Cammie's birthday. Now, it wasn't my dad or his wife who invited Sarah and me, it was Cammie herself. Sarah is Indian. She only has a mild accent, not thick, and not at all difficult to understand. After the party, we were just sitting and talking, and we were doing impressions of people for fun. Cammie said she was going to do an impression of Sarah. She didn't ask if Sarah was okay with that, but I knew she wasn't. She feels very self-conscious while speaking because of her accent. Anyway, Cammie did it, and she started with a very thick accent and said something along the lines of not bathing. Sarah told her to stop, that it was not true at all. Cammie laughed and told her to chill with curry. I told Cammie to cut it out, but Sarah wanted to leave, so we just left. She refused to say anything on her way back. Earlier today, I got a call from Cammie asking me if Sarah was still upset. I said yes, and told her that she owes my girlfriend an apology. She said no. Sarah needs to grow up and accept the fact that she will be made fun of, and that she needs to take a joke. I told her that it wasn't an excuse for making comments about not bathing. She said she didn't aim it at Sarah, and when I asked if she was willing to tell that to Sarah, she got pissed at me. She made a post on Insta about how sensitive people need to grow up and learn that the world doesn't revolve around them. I commented that she needs to stop being racist and that I was glad we won't be related much longer. Cami called me crying, saying that I made her look like a bitch, and people have also been texting me saying that on a social platform was an asshole move. I am not asking if I was wrong to say that. I am asking if I was wrong to say it on social media. Was I wrong here? Should I apologize to her? This is an interesting one because, I mean, yes, it was probably wrong to say it on social media, but also she posted on social media in the first place. It is a classic example of if you can't take it, don't dish it out. Saying a joke about her, Sarah not bathing and then going, oh, it wasn't directed at Sarah, so was it directed at the entire country that Sarah comes from? Because that's so much better. It's just racial profiling is, yeah, it's so much better than just directing it at a single person. I think in this case, it was justified to lash out in the way that OP lashed out because she started it and tried to make it a thing on social media. She tried to act like, oh, she's the one in the right and Sarah needs to grow up by posting about it on social media. So no, I think she deserved to have you quip back at her. Yeah, that's my opinion. Am I the asshole for not helping my ex-wife? Let me start this off by saying I, 45 male, was an awful person in my 30s. I did drugs, I was selfish, I wrecked my marriage, and was horrible towards my then wife. At the end of our marriage, she got pregnant, but she miscarried, and that was what really ended the marriage. After the divorce, I went to rehab, got clean, and have now been sober for 7 years. I got a good job and rented an apartment that I still live in. I even managed to save up some money. My life is really good now. I have an amazing fiance. My ex moved on and remarried, but she never managed to have kids. She is 39 now and is trying to get pregnant via IVF. She recently contacted me and asked me to pay for the IVF treatment because she says the miscarriage she had caused her so many problems that she will never get pregnant naturally. She has a minimum wage job and is paying off a lot of debt. So is her husband, and they can't afford IVF now. I told her I have to talk to my fiance about it, but I don't feel comfortable paying her IVF. I talked to my fiance, she said that it's a ridiculous request. I called my ex and told her I won't be paying for the IVF. She called me selfish and said it's my fault she can't get pregnant anymore because the miscarriage was my fault anyway. Am I the asshole? Absolutely not. That is a ludicrous request for an ex-wife to make to her ex-husband. Full stop. Regardless of what terms you left on, who was in the right and wrong of the marriage, whose fault the divorce was, anything. None of that matters because this request is absolutely ridiculous. Like, end of. Furthermore, she blames you for the miscarriage. I don't know what the situation was, but I don't think you had control over her body. Furthermore, times 2, she's 39, so of course she's struggling to have a child. She's 39. That's not your responsibility. I don't know what effects the miscarriage might have had on her body, but she's still 39. I think that's the end of it. I've never seen such a ludicrous request as asking someone that you've been divorced with for, what, more than 7 years to pay for your IVF treatment. Nah, right, yeah. So as much as there aren't many posts in here where the OP is the asshole, which there are a couple, I think there's still some really interesting stories here. Like, I don't know how OP could have come to the conclusion that they were the asshole for rejecting such a ludicrous request as this. Am I the asshole for calling my wife a hypocrite? This one's marked asshole. My wife, female 25, and I, male 27, are expecting a baby boy. So far, we've had no disagreements except for the name choice. She wants to name our son after her grandfather, but I want to name him after my deceased stepdad because he was such a great man who has done so much for me. Notice how straight off the bat, he just says that she wants to name the kid after her granddad. End of. He wants to name it after his stepdad because he was such a great man that did so much. He's already trying to play this out like he's more in the right. We went back and forth on the issue, and she's then suggested we blend the name, but I found that insulting because it just ruined the idea behind honoring my stepdad and also ruined the name itself. Notice how it's not ruined the idea of naming people to honor. It ruined your idea of naming it after your stepdad. Your idea there, sir. Your idea. A huge argument ensued because of that, and she went into the bedroom and shut the door harshly. I was pretty upset and irritated, and I went inside the kitchen and called my mum because I needed to rant to somebody. While I was on the phone, I saw my wife walking in with a small bag under her hand because she wanted to go away to stay with her mum for a few days. She saw me on the phone with mum, was like, "Ooh, a mama's boy." I had to say goodbye to my mum, then I snapped and called my wife a hypocrite and told her if a 5-minute phone conversation with mum makes me a mama's boy, then packing to go stay with your mum for a few days makes you what? She got upset and started lecturing me to stop getting mum involved in our issues and told me if my mum tries to call her to scold her, then she'll have a harsh response for her. I told her she was wrong because I was just venting, as I always do, about anything and needed someone to talk to. She said that calling her a hypocrite was awful of me and then walked out. I tried to call her later thinking she has calmed down, but she hasn't responded yet. Am I the asshole? I was just trying to get her to see how she was berating me for doing something that has no problem doing, but she needed space. Yes, you are. Okay, so first of all, you're the one that refused to compromise, taking only your own feelings into account. You completely neglect her feelings, the reasons she has for wanting to name a child after one of her relatives, purely for your own sake because you feel that you are in the right for naming your child after the person you want to name them after, and refused to compromise because you didn't like the compromise. Then you went and complained to your mother about it. And this is where things get interesting, because you complained to your mother, but your wife specifically mentioned that if your mom scolds her, she'll have a harsh response, which implies this isn't the first time you have complained to your mother and your mother has scolded her. She is leaving because of a disagreement and you have complained to your mother, who then might scold her? If that's the case, then yes, you are a mummy's boy, because you are complaining to your mother to scold your wife rather than discussing it logically with your wife. I actually saved a couple of the comments from this post because I think people put it a lot better than I could. While I think there is more going on here than just a baby's name, I have to ask the question first because it may be relevant. How often do you call your mother when issues arrive, and why is your mother calling your wife to scold her? That sounds like more than a one-off situation. I agree that this is part of what makes it definitely OP's fault. You're the asshole. And if you constantly vent against your wife to your mum, who then calls her to scold her, then you are a mummy's boy and not a good husband. The reason why your wife leaves is because the two of you have equally valid reasons for wanting to name your baby boy, but while she is willing to discuss and compromise so both of you could at least have part in the naming, you only tried to win and overrule her, completely dismissing her feelings and her right to name the baby together with you. Now she feels discarded and overlooked and needs to calm down to not escalate the situation. The reason you vented to your mum was because she didn't do your bidding and you knew your mum would take your side and not reason with you and probably call your wife to pressure her into letting you have your way, thus for trying to escalate and get your way. So you're the hypocrite here. You constantly vent to your mum and find excuses for that, but if she leaves and tells you it's because she's mad, you criticize her because you know fairly well your venting is in reality just complaining to get your mum to intervene with you. Couldn't have put it better myself. I think I tried. I tried to put a reason there, but this person just worded it so much better than I ever would. So OP, if you ever see this, there you go. Am I the asshole for changing all the locks in my house without letting my mum know? When I, 23 male, was 15, my dad died. My mum, 45, didn't wait too long to start over and moved her new partner in just 2 months later. My dad left everything to me and not even a dime to her. They were not married. My dad's will was so structured that she couldn't challenge it, and she attempted and even asked me to pass over one of my properties to show my new dad that he was welcomed. I couldn't even if I wanted to because my dad's will was so specified that I must be over 21 to access everything he left me. This dude had kids, 18 male, 19 female, their ages now, and my mum prioritized them to keep him happy. I mean, she wasn't like abusive or neglectful, but she tended to favor them. They went on trips, and even if she didn't tell me not to go, she'd say something along the lines of, "Wouldn't you like to go to your grandparents better?" I mean, I'm not stupid, and I know she didn't want me there. When I turned 17, she asked me to leave my own house because I kept fighting with her dude, and I also reminded him of whose house it was. When he wanted to play the man of the house, I also called him John Conroy. My grandparents told me to avoid confrontation, so I went to live with them. My mum would visit me often and tell me how much she loved, but she needed to keep peace at home. After college, I decided to check my properties and also the one that my mum is living at. I wanted to renovate it to rent it since it's a good one and can help me afford my master's. I went there to inform my mum, but no one was there. Later I found out they were on vacation. I called her, but she didn't answer, so I proceeded to change the locks, mainly to officially take possession. They arrived yesterday and couldn't get in. Of course, they called me, but I wasn't in town. I went today because some renovations will start in a few weeks. I was in the backyard and my mum came in furious, yelling at me saying, "How dare I do that?" So we talked and I let them know that they have 2 weeks to leave. Her husband, self-employed, was furious. My mum and her stepdaughter started crying because the girl is pregnant. I'm sorry, but I made up my mind. My mum's family is shaming me, but I'd like to know if you think I'm the asshole. My mum called me today so we can talk. Absolutely not. This is a crazy situation, but the fact that you were pressured into leaving your own property by someone who you're not even related to, who is trying to take control over you and your property, I find this ridiculous. Like, you were the bigger person to leave, but now that you're old enough to take control of your own property, you have every right to ask them to move out. You absolutely, or at least ask them to start paying rent, because ultimately you are the property owner. You are the landlord of that house. They want to own your property that they have no ownership and no right over owning. Because what? Because they got married? Because they moved in 2 months after your dad died? The property's in your name and you can do what you want. Any of their circumstances, the daughter being pregnant, the dad being unemployed / self-employed, them not being able to afford anywhere else to live, none of that is your problem. They haven't been in your life. They haven't been a part of your life. They actively moved you out of their lives. So take back your property, take control. Ultimately, you have every right to do so. And the final post. Am I the asshole for screaming at my mother for lying to me and blaming me for my miscarriage? I had gotten pregnant at 14 and my parents were reasonably upset with me, but my father was understanding of my decision to have the baby but give them up for adoption afterward. My mother, however, demanded that I keep the baby and raise it as it was, quote, my job as a woman. After 6 months of pregnancy and arguments over whether or not to raise the baby, even after I had a family willing to adopt the baby, I began to miscarry in class. When I realized what was happening, I immediately told the teacher and they called 911. Then my parents. This was hard on me, my parents and the family who had planned to adopt my baby, but my mother was inconsolable. It turns out she had pretended to be a family of 3 and was planning on adopting the baby as her child. I was angry, obviously, and began screaming at her, telling her I would never speak to her after she did such a thing. But now, after a year and a half later, I'm not sure if it was really justified to scream and cut her off entirely. My father even divorced her because of what she did. Are we in the wrong for cutting her off, or is it justified because of her actions? That's justified. This is a absolute mess of a situation. Planning to adopt your baby without telling you or her husband is crazy. The end of. You're her daughter and she wanted to adopt your baby to the point where she lied about who she was and what her identity was so that you would think she was a family adopting the baby. She didn't tell her husband this, and then she blamed you for miscarrying? I think you were in the right for cutting her off because that is an insanely awful thing to do in every single way. And quite frankly, I think your dad was in the right for getting a divorce after she planned on adopting your baby without telling you or him. I think you're probably better off not having that kind of person in your life, quite frankly. And that's where I'm going to end the video, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed. If you want to support me in making more content like this, then I have a Patreon in the description down below, or equally you can click that join button on the channel, or you can click the thanks button to give a one-time donation to support me. It helps a lot more than you might realize, but by no means should you feel like you have to do any of that, as I am going to keep making content regardless. Oh, my voice is starting to go. Special thank you to Nix, Holly Miller, Kaorianne Mori, Chase Howard, Karen Duca, Top Shelf, Ralph, L, Rennie, Dev, Thomas Penny, Emily Potter, Greyhound, Maxine Lankow, Gravity Gaia, Kelly Bock, Lucky Socks, Carolyn, The Angry Potato, Sven Arctic Fox, Outcast Jupiter, Abel Eris Winchester, Ghost Orchid, Charlie the Mad 256, Kate Cat, The Wings of Ruin, Conspiracy Cake, Two Lakes in a Valley, Ica Limchok, An Agent, Galaxy, Ronnie, Tam, Bug, Toxie Rain, and Salted Denim for supporting my channel and supporting my content. Thank you so much, guys. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.